There, my name is Thomas O'Regan and I'm a professional property investor here in Australia. Now, a lot of people wonder, what's a better investment, or should I consider units? What's a better investment, houses or units? Should I even consider units? The answer is, in my opinion, as a professional investor, there is no such thing as houses versus units. Like, you need to stop thinking about should I buy a house or a unit? What you need to really understand is the fundamentals under it all, okay? So, and what I mean by that is you don't need to be looking at, is this unit a good investment, or is this house a good investment, or which one has more intrinsic value? What you need to be focusing on, because it ultimately, this is what people mean by they say houses are a better investment than units, is what they mean is the land content is valued more in the house than it is in a unit, right? And when you break it down like that, it's no longer a house or a unit. What the actual measurement is what property holds more land value? What property am I buying as close to the land value as I possibly can? Okay, now for the price. Now, an example of that is you could buy a house that the underlying land value is far less than what you're paying for the house, okay? And I would consider that a bad investment. Same thing for a unit. You can buy a unit that has substantially lower land content value than what you're paying for it. But what you really need to understand is a good investment. One of the metrics of making a good investment is how close can I buy this investment for? How close can I get it to the actual land value? If there's a house on a property and you're paying essentially the same amount of money that someone would for a vacant lot, but you're getting a house on it, that's a good investment, obviously, right? But the same thing actually is true for an apartment as well. Okay, so you can buy an apartment for the same land value that the apartment is, or the apartment represents. And just because there is many apartments in the complex doesn't mean its entitlement of land value is equal to far less than what you're paying for it. Okay? Hope this is making sense, but let me do an example, okay? So you might if you're just saying houses versus units, you're not thinking right, and I'll explain it, okay? So if you had a house that was in the country, okay, and the land value was very low, and you saw it for a very good price, and you thought it was a good price because you were just thinking this is a house. You're not thinking what's the land value worth. You see it for a price of $300,000. Is that a good investment? Well, if you're just going houses versus units, it is a good investment, but that's wrong. That's wrong. Don't go houses versus units. Go, what is the land value under the house? And if you dig deeper, you might find that, okay, I'm paying $300,000 for this house in the country or the regional area, wherever, but the actual land value is only worth $50,000. So is that a good investment, I ask you? The answer is no. But if you were looking through it through the lens of houses versus units, you would choose it over a unit with a higher land value. Now, let me flip that over and go, okay, so if you were buying a unit in a blue chip metro area, and for example, it was a complex of 8, and the underlying land under the 8 apartments was, just to be silly, let's call it 8,000 square meters of land on the apartment. That's pretty unrealistic. I hope you understand that. But just to drill in and help you understand what I'm trying to explain to you, Razi. So what if that land value was worth $8 million because it's in a blue chip CBD area? Then if you're paying $300,000, which is the same price you would have paid for that house in the regional area, you are actually making a far better investment, okay? Because the underlying land value was $8,000 for the whole lot. But you are one of 8 units. So you get an eighth of that, which is $1 million. So it's a fantastic investment. It's a fantastic investment, but it's a unit. Now, I want to just dive a bit deeper into something that's a bit more of a realistic scenario, okay? So now let's look at something a bit more realistic. So if you understand what I'm saying now, you'll start looking at properties differently. You go, what is the land worth under this house or apartment? And you won't be asking anymore houses versus units. As I said, there's no such thing as houses versus units. It's what is the land value under this investment. You're buying properties. You're a property investor, not a house investor. There's no such thing as a house investor, property investor. Okay, you invest in properties, use metrics that are fundamental. You don't look at things objectively, you look at things subjectively. Okay, you don't use your emotions to invest, you use logic. Okay, that's how you make good investment decisions. But back to what I was saying. Now let's look at a high-rise apartment in the city, just to like really expand your mind here. Most people think high-rise apartments are terrible investments just because they're high-rise apartments. What they don't understand is what is the actual land value under the high-rise apartment? What entitlement of the land do you get from your ownership of the apartment? It may, and in most circumstances, it is a very small portion of the land, but the reality is the high-rise apartment, if it's in a CBD area, the land value is astronomically higher than any other value of a house that you would pay. Now, I'll give you an example. So a blue chip area, land value for a house in a blue chip area might be around $5,000 a square meter. But if you go into the CBD, you get the most premium real estate in the CBD. Main street of the CBD, the land value per square meter might be $100,000, okay? Now imagine if you are buying an apartment and it's an apartment of 300. There's 300 other apartments. If you're just simply looking at house or unit, you would just bin the unit, right? But what you got to understand, as I'm trying to drill in here, is what is the land value under the unit? So you need to dig a bit deeper and go, this apartment of 300, how large is the land component under the apartment or under this development site? Okay, it's 5,000 square meters of land in premium city location that's worth $100,000. I haven't done the maths and I can't do that sort of maths in my head. I need a calculator, but obviously it's worth a lot of money. The total development site, I think I said 5,000 square meters times $100,000. I need to just get the maths right here. $100,000. Okay, so the site is worth $500 million, okay? Nobody's thinking about this stuff. I invest in high-rise apartments, and this is the stuff you have to think about if you want to make good investments. Now, what is that divided by 300? Divided by 300. Okay, so it's so essentially, regardless of the fact that there's 300 units in this apartment, the actual value of the land in this development, or the entitlement you have of this development, is $1.666 million. So even if you pay $1.666 million for this apartment that's in a high-rise complex of 300, you're still buying it for land value. And I would say, for example, if you buy a house that's on 500 square meters for $5,000 a square meter of land, if you were to compare it to, is that a better investment than a house on 500 square meters that's worth $2.5 million? I would say intrinsically it's of the same value. It's a different price, but it's of the same value, because 500 square meters of land at $5,000 a square meter is $2.5 million. So if you were to pay, for example, $4 million for this house, I would say the house is actually a worse investment at that price than buying a unit in an apartment complex of 300 with an underlying land value of 1.66 million. If you buy the apartment for 1.66 million, it's a good investment. Hopefully you guys have understood what I'm trying to tell you today, but it's not, there's no such thing as units versus houses. It's a property is a property. You have to look at it subjectively through that lens, and you have to understand where the value is. See you guys next time. Bye.